Welcome to EdTechX Stories. My name is Benjamin Vidren-Cloquet. I'm CEO of EdTechX and partner at IBIS Capital. EdTechX Story is every week 5 minutes of interaction with influencers and innovators making the future of education and work. I hope you'll enjoy our next story. Please join me to welcome our next guest.
Hi, Jeff. I wanted to thank you for joining the call and the webinar, and I really appreciate your time. I know as an entrepreneur, you're really, really busy. I wanted to start out with asking you a little bit about who you are and what you've done, and just to give the audience a background.
Well, first of all, thanks a lot for having me. Really appreciate the time. Well, what's the summary? I'm an Australian, lived in London for the last 12 years. Second-time founder. I had a fail, snuck in there early on, moved into sort of the corporate world, and now I'm back having my second go at it as a tech entrepreneur and loving life.
I wanted to ask you, so for founders, most of the time there is a history of entrepreneurship. And so when you look at your history, and people get false starts all the time. You can't even count that, right? And so here you are, come back into the market, doing your next startup. Where did this journey start for you with Enroly?
I think I got the bug for entrepreneurship really early on. I was picking berries, selling them, car washes, you name it. I was as many businesses as I could get my hands on as a kid growing up. So I really caught the bug there. And also I have entrepreneurship in my family. My mother was a nurse, and she was regularly quitting her job to start businesses, and she had some successes and some failures as well. So I sort of grew up with that culture, which really opened my eyes to the concept of paving your own way. And really our first proper attempt, which is where I sort of met my co-founder that I work with today, was a TV production business straight out of university. And we very quickly got some great traction. We were making content for the ABC and for Fox Sports. However, that journey was really a successful failure, as you say, and something we just chalk up as an experience.
I mean, that happens to everybody, right? And as long as you use that stepping stone as a guide to success, it is a successful failure. I think that the way you worded that was perfect. So in retrospect, when you go back and look at your experience with the TV production company, where do you think it failed, and where do you think you learned?
I think there were two things there. One, we missed the pivot. We didn't understand that you needed to follow pivots in business sometimes. We thought the first idea was the idea, and I think we missed the online revolution. We were producing sort of TV for traditional platforms. Meanwhile, we were watching online video grow, and we never really joined the dots that we could have produced online content and didn't pivot in that way. We were young. We would have possibly done very well in that space. But the biggest learning point was really around the team. We had the three kind of key components, which I kind of call the hacker, the hustler, and the hipster. So we had a great product guy, we had a great tech guy, and then myself, as you may have guessed, as the sort of the salesperson out there making it happen. So for me, that was probably the biggest learning point, that those ingredients in the founding team.
So when you looked at this TV company and then you had this failure happen, and then what happened? You went to corporate America, and then how did you get eventually back into the game and get Enroly started?
Well, yeah, the company sort of run out of money. We missed a few opportunities, obviously, and hit that point of failure, and just had to make some hard choices about what was next. And a job opportunity fell in my lap. It was involved a lot of travel. It was around sort of sales and marketing that I'd studied at university. And I just thought, I was still at this point only 24. So I had quite a few war wounds from the first company. And I just thought, maybe I'll just follow the normal path for a little bit. And that ended up being in a regular job for 10 years, but loved it, learned so much. And that's how I sort of discovered the industry where, the startup that we now have operates in. So, I feel like it's added a great deal of value to where we are right now.
So you became a subject matter expert by working in that business. So, I mean, essentially this guided you to recognize this inch wide, mile deep opportunity that other people missed because you were in the industry.
Yeah, I love that, inch wide, mile deep. That's great. I think there's probably some alignment with older founders with those types of opportunities, I guess, as someone who's now in my late 30s. It's, yeah, very much an industry specific opportunity where actually I see when I think about my younger colleagues who are founders, they're much more broad in what they're going for. But yeah, no, absolutely, we are inch wide, mile deep. That's a great. I love that, Greg.
Yeah, I find that founders are visionaries or subject matter experts, and subject matter experts are the only ones that can see true problems that everybody else misses, and that's because they're in the mix, right? So when you think about transition here out of corporate life and you're back to a founder, what happens next?
So, interesting story. I met an investor at a conference in a bar, again, an industry conference. And we just got chatting over a drink, and I told him I had a few ideas. And he sort of opened my eyes and world back up to entrepreneurship, and specifically sort of the tech investment world and how an investor operates and what the opportunities are that are out there for founders with ideas. And he actually he liked the idea initially, and he said, "Why don't you come down to my office next week and pitch this to us properly? You know, we'll give you half an hour, pitch it, we'll have a chat, see what we think." And so over that weekend, frantically put a deck together. No idea really what we were doing. We're Googling, you know, tech startups, trying to figure out what it is we were proposing. And hilariously, when I think back, I didn't quite realize we were even starting a tech startup. As stupid as that sounds, being someone who's non-technical. But anyway, we go down, pitch on the Monday. I actually flew out that evening to Hong Kong for my regular job. And he called me the next day and he said, "Look, I'd love to give you some seed investment. The only condition is you quit that job and you go for it. Otherwise, the money's off the table." So put me in this really difficult position, which was obviously quite deliberate in hindsight. This guy's Jan, is his name. He's runs a venture fund called Emerge. I'll just give him the credit for that. And yeah, he kind of forced me to quit my job. And it was like chopping an arm off, Greg. Like, it was so painful, but yeah, haven't looked back.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's like jumping into ice water. You know, you're at the edge there, just looking down, going, "Ooh, I know this is going to be cold." And then you have to jump all in. You can't just stick your toe in, otherwise you just mess around for a long time. I respect that a lot. I find it really interesting too. So when I dig in there a little bit, and now it's 2017. You started Enroly. And how's this journey going from 2017? Catch us up over time of what you've done from that meeting and getting that first investment to where you are now.
Yeah, I'd say it's your classic baptism of fire is the only way to describe it. And for me, it really shows, as a first-time founder, I can really understand how investors have a lot of respect for second and third-time founders that have been successful before, because it feels like there are rules to the game to make this work. And if you know them, you've got a big advantage. And for me, it's been, you know, in my founding team, Maynard, my co-founder, it's been about learning the rules, right, of a startup. It's minimum viable product, you know, getting something out there quick and getting data, that iterative process of development. It's, you know, finding that market fit, but then also understanding the models. You know, how do you generate revenue, and the channels? How do you go out and how do you sell it? And then the relationship between those. So there's so many aspects to a startup that once you understand those models and practices and strategies, it's I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's definitely a lot more fluid than when you're discovering those processes as well. So, you know, we started out with a referral platform for international students, but we've now pivoted over time to effectively enterprise automation software for universities. So massive departure from where we started. But, you know, as I said before with TV, I learned not to ignore those pivots and those opportunities. And yeah, here we are today with a completely different product being our core business than what I pitched in that pub back in 2017.
It's obvious that you found an inch wide, mile deep, big problem. A big problem, you know, equals big opportunity, because you're on track to pick up more than 30% market share this year. How are you going about that? Is that the go-to-market strategy? Is that your sales strategy, your channel partner strategy? You know, how would you sort of unpack the concept of going from zero to blast off and getting 30% market share in the amount of time that you've had this business?
So we're very focused in what the problem that we're solving. There's not a lot of competitors in that particular space. Our competitors are often spreadsheets and emails when you boil it down. But then also another reason has really been some fantastic university clients. So we've really found a great selection of innovators, and it's quite rare to find people in this sector that are willing to innovate. And there's people like Chris Buston and Paul Rees over at Greenwich, James Morris and Donald O'Connor at South Wales, Ross Davidson at UCA, Rachel McSween at York. So, it's, I think, to make something like this work, you've really got to find those people that are willing to innovate and take risks with you, just like the entrepreneur does.
So let me just ask you some final thoughts. What's your favorite day of the week?
Sunday. It's still the weekend, but I'm absolutely pumped to get to Monday, which is it's been a long time since I've said that. It's only since I've been a founder that I've felt like that.
All right, so this is a good one. How many cups of coffee do you think you drink in a day?
Oh, that's a hard one. I've converted all my coffees to doubles now, so that makes me feel better about myself. But I'd say, yeah, it's like 3 doubles and maybe a French press at the end, just to. It's too much. Too much. Next question.
The answer is too much. The answer is too much.
Yeah.
So what things do you usually put on your bucket list? Like, what are these activities that you do personally that make you motivated in your personal life? Bucket list.
Yeah. Look, to be honest, this is my biggest bucket list item, was to be a founder again and put it all on the line. Like, I always, back, I don't know if New Year's resolutions, I always had a little word with myself. I was like, this year, Jeff, this year, for 10 years since the business failed, that I said that every year. And I think, honestly, this was number 1 on the bucket list. Other than that, it's just a whole long list of cars, Greg, and let's not get into that.
So, if you could talk to the president / prime minister, what would you talk about?
Oh, God, that's a big one.
Difficult one, right?
That's a big one. Just how can we marry up private and public sector in a better way? There's so much great talent out there in the private sector that is trying to get into public sector, and there's just this big wall between us. What is one thing we could do in one industry to bridge that gap a little bit?
I think that's beautiful. Beautiful for somebody that's super enthusiastic about the startup ecosystem. I think that's beautiful. One final question before I let you go. And again, thank you so much. I really appreciate, both personally for me to have the honor to interview you, but also to be on the show altogether. Jeff, who would you like to nominate to be interviewed on EdTechX Stories next?
I'll put 2 forward, and you can see what you think. One is our lead investor, Andrew Larson, who runs Larson Ventures. I'd be super keen to hear maybe from the investor side. I'd also love to hear from you, Greg. I've got so many questions. If I can somehow get you interviewed on this program, I mean, I think you've got so much experience. And if you don't, do you mind if I ask you one question before we wrap up?
No, sure. Go ahead. Shoot.
So,
sure.
Obviously, you've exited some really big companies, and people who know that it's hundreds of millions big. And I just wonder, you're an investor as well. I'm just sort of wondering, once you hit that level that you're at now, like, why do you keep going? Like, what's driving you now, and what are you hoping to do next?
People like you keep me going. And that's, to be totally honest. Like, I got to a point and I wanted to give back. And I learned that the way I can give back is by helping other entrepreneurs all around the world. And so I decided to dedicate the rest of my life to that. And it really is people like you. I love to watch entrepreneurs succeed. It is enlightening for me, to say the least. Thank you for asking that question, Jeff. That's very cool.
No, my pleasure. No, thanks a lot, Greg. I really appreciate the time today. It's been great.
Sure. Thank you.